Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the 9th session of the Reliance Foundation Youth Sports Athletics Development Webinar Series 2021. Thank you for attending this webinar today. We are all very excited to have you here with us again today at this webinar series brought to you by Reliance Foundation Youth Sports. RFYS aims to enable the ecosystem of sports through improvement in infrastructure, skill development of physical education teachers, digital empowerment, and by creating sporting heroes. Reliance Foundation Youth Sports is a countrywide multi-sport platform for school and college athletes. The platform was established to encourage sporting culture in schools and colleges and to enable India's next champions. The contents of these presentations are purely for educational purpose and should not be used for medical advice. If you have any questions during the presentation, you may please type it in the Q&A box and they will be responded to at the end of the session. Please make sure to follow our social media pages for more updates on the athletics development series and for other RFIs related content. This series consists of 12 webinars covering athlete development aspects such as coaching, strength and conditioning, sports injury prevention and management, sports psychology, and nutrition. If you are, as you're already aware, regular participants at these webinars will be awarded a certificate. Additionally, a few lucky ones will be invited to attend our advanced webinar series, which is coming up shortly. Today's topic, Building Sporting Confidence, is being presented by Maithili Bhuptani, Lead Sports and Exercise Psychologist at Sir H.N. Reliance Foundation Hospital, Mumbai. Now, I welcome Maithili and over to you.
Thank you, Ajit. Hi, everyone. A very good evening to all of you. I'm Maithili Bhuptani. I'm the sports psychologist. A very warm welcome to each one of you at this athletics development series, where today we'll be talking about building sporting confidence. So confidence is something that can be developed and moreover can be practiced to be higher and higher over time. Confidence building can be encouraged from a very young age so that once athletes are more grown up and have had experience in their athletics development, they are already aware of this concept. So before we begin, I just request you if you can keep a paper and a pen with you as we will be doing a few activities during this presentation together. So this is what we'll be covering briefly in today's session. We'll start by talking about what sporting confidence really is. We will move on to talking about why confidence is important in sports and one very important aspect, which is what are some of the sources of confidence. Then we will be spending most of our time understanding how to boost confidence by talking about different styles of body language and the impact it has on an athlete's performance. We will be concluding the session with any questions that you might have for me, and I will be more than happy to answer them towards the end of the session. So let's begin by talking about what sporting confidence really is. So sporting confidence was defined as early as 1986 as the belief or the degree that an individual possesses about their own ability to be successful in the sport that they play. So confidence is technically defined as the belief in one's ability to accomplish a task that they're trying to do. So sports confidence is a firm belief in one's athletic abilities. For instance, an athlete feels that he has the ability to sprint 100 meters. So then the question that arises is, why is this sports confidence that we're talking about so important? Why is it so important to kind of build this confidence over time? So sporting confidence is very important because if you can have the ability to execute a task, but if you don't believe that you have the ability, then you won't be able to perform till that ability. So for example, an athlete may be physically and technically capable of sprinting 100 meters in say 12 seconds. But if he can't push himself harder to meet the goal, if he doesn't have the confidence that he can successfully sprint in those 12 seconds, he won't be able to do it. So too often, athletes lose not because of their opponents or their competitors, but because they lack the confidence in their ability to actually achieve the task. So evidence suggests that high sport confidence actually facilitates performance through its positive effect on athletes' cognitions, which are the thoughts, affect, and behaviors, while low sporting confidence is synonymous with negative affect, faulty cognitions, and ineffective behaviors. So, sport confidence is essential to achieving the sport goals that the athletes have for themselves. A high belief in one's abilities is always a characteristic of high achieving athletes. So, Muhammad Ali used to always repeat, I am the greatest, kind of this statement over and over again, reflecting a belief in his own boxing abilities that he had in himself. So that confidence carried over into a successful career in which he defeated many other tough and capable boxers. But what he had was the confidence in himself and the belief that he could actually do it. So there are multiple theories that have originated on confidence and why confidence remains high and low amongst certain athletes. So now we're going to be spending some time understanding what can be some of the sources of confidence. So one theory which we can apply to the real world of sport is the self-efficacy theory proposed by Bandura in 1977. So what is self-efficacy? I use the word self-efficacy. So self-efficacy can literally be defined as one's ability to perform a task successfully. Very simple. So self-efficacy is derived from 6 sources that we are going to be talking about today. So Bandura's theory that I told you about was amended to form a sport-specific version that we are going to be talking about now. So we will be discussing these 6 sources of confidence in a little bit more detail. So now what we're going to do is a quick activity before I tell you what performance accomplishments are all about. That's the first source that we were talking about. So I want all of you to think about your past best performance or any skill that you have mastered. Think about how it makes you feel. Think about all the compliments you got, all the praises you achieved. Everyone just take 30 seconds, think for yourself. How does it make you feel when I tell you to think about your best performance? So just take 30 seconds and write it down if you have a paper and a pen with you. And if not, then just think of it to yourself. Go back to your best performance or any skill that you have mastered that you are really proud of yourself for. Okay, have you got somewhat of an idea of what your best performance look like? So performance accomplishments are the strongest contributor to sporting confidence. So when you perform any skill successfully, you will generate confidence and be willing to attempt something slightly more difficult. So skill learning should be organized into a series of tasks that actually progress gradually and allow you to master each step before progressing on to the next one. So personal success breeds confidence, while repeated personal failure diminishes it. So performance accomplishments that we're talking about are all about experiences with being successful and failing. So if you have successful experiences, self-efficacy will be increased. So tasks that are require abilities more than you possess, it is unrealistic to expect success on that task. So it is important to initially reduce task difficulty so that you attain success and subsequently the confidence to perform the task. So, however, of course, the task should not be very easy to attain. Otherwise, we'll get used to achieving easy success and will be discouraged by failure. So it is also important to understand that your journey to attain mastery will be full of hurdles. So it is inevitable to kind of escape adversities in your sporting career. To maintain or regain confidence during tough times, so one must see that failure should be seen as a source of information to learn from your mistakes and improve. So if seen this way, then adversities can actually be turned into opportunities rather than a more demoralizing event. Right. So this is the first source of confidence that you can use, which are thinking of your past accomplishments, something that you're really proud of, or something that you've mastered, which has been really difficult for you. So as a coach, how can you influence this? This is for any coaches out there. So do you set really challenging sessions where athletes aren't experiencing success? Or are you setting realistic yet challenging goals? So these are some of the questions you can ask yourself. So when coaching, think to yourself, how can I create opportunities for my athletes to succeed? So can I set individual goals for the athletes that I know that they're going to achieve? Can I discuss the goals with my athletes so that they achieve, so that they understand them and they can achieve them? So we want athletes to experience success, but that doesn't mean that you can't set a challenging session where athletes will fail, right? So it is important to teach athletes to learn from failure and to kind of build resilient athletes who can kind of overcome any obstacles. So this is something that coaches can give it a thought about. Moving on to the second source, which is vicarious experiences. So what is vicarious experiences? Basically experiencing the imagination through the feelings or actions of another person, right? So being involved with the success of others can also significantly bolster your confidence, especially if you believe that the performer you are involved with closely matches your own qualities or abilities. So in effect, it kind of evokes that reaction that if they can do it, I can also do it. Confidence can be gained from vicarious experiences such as observational learning and participatory modeling. So in observational learning, what happens is when you watch your role model or a video as a reference, and you kind of get confidence by watching them. So if, for example, a skilled coach or a skilled teammate, watching others like you perform well will boost your beliefs in your own abilities. Participatory modeling refers to having either your coach or your teammate perform the skills first and then help you correct your techniques. So therefore, having a knowledgeable and effective coach in such a way that presents for you as a model is also quite important. So this was all about vicarious experiences, how you can get confidence by watching someone you really are inspired by or really look up is of gaining confidence. Third one we're going to be talking about is verbal persuasion. So if an athlete is persuaded to believe in himself, then he's more likely to put in high efforts, which will obviously increase the chances of success. So this persuasion can come from a variety of sources such as positive self-talk, cheering from your supporters, a pre-game speech, family support, or encouragement from your coaches. So here we have an example of an athlete doing positive self-talk just before her race. I'll just play it again anyway. So she says, yes, I can do it. So successful confidence builders do more than just, conveying faith in others. They kind of structure situations in a way that increases an athlete's chance to success and avoid situations that are more likely to expose them to failure. So as an athlete, it is very important for you to surround yourself with knowledgeable and supportive people to increase your self-confidence and avoid negative verbal persuasion, as it is easier to discourage than build confidence. So confidence breaks really easily, but takes much longer to build. So negative verbal persuasion creates a situation that we term as adverse self-fulfilling prophecy. So when an athlete is persuaded that he lacks capabilities to succeed, the athlete is more likely to avoid adverse situations or challenging goals. So therefore, to avoid such a situation, all athletes should try and maintain an optimistic perspective, right? So this is all about verbal persuasions. What can you talk to yourself? How can you kind of change the way you speak to yourself before a race, during training sessions? And how can you keep an optimistic perspective? Similarly, as a coach, how do you kind of speak to players then, or how are you aware of how you're speaking to your athletes? So are you a coach who constantly tells their athletes what to do? So there's a way of doing that. Every coach has a different way of doing it. So subtle differences in language make all the difference to athletes, right? So younger athletes rely heavily on adult feedback, and it is important that the feedback which we provide as coaches is positive and constructional. So as a coach, start to praise the effort of your athletes from a young age. Start to make them realize the importance of learning and hard work, of course. So you want to develop athletes who enjoy learning and practice, and who understand that it is important for their growth, right? So you want to make it a constructive growth for them. So coaches often try to boost confidence by convincing athletes that the challenge ahead, which is set for them, is within their capabilities. So you say things like, I know you're a great athlete, so keep your head up and just keep going. So an athlete might reinforce this, and by repeating this message over and over in the athlete's mind is a sort of self-persuasion that the athlete will learn because of what you have said to him. So a quick tip here is to avoid stating that you want in the negative. So rather than saying, I really don't want to come off second best, try and saying, I really want to win this one. So avoid using any no statements or any do not or don't want statements, because those come off as negative ones. So accordingly, your mind will kind of need to consider what is not required in order to arrive at what is. Right. So this is something that coaches and athletes can both do as a quick tip. Right. So next one that we're going to be talking about is imaginal experiences. So imagery experiences have to do with athletes recreating images of successful performance in their mind, right? So by creating such mental representations, mastery of a particular task or a set of circumstances is far more likely. So you can think of a time when you have been in a situation and used imagery to actually, imagine yourself performing well, a particular race well. So when you imagined this, did it make you feel better? Did it make you feel confident? Could you kind of imagine some of the techniques that you were going to execute in the race, right? So imagery is a great tool which is used to increase confidence. Not every athlete has the ability to use imagery immediately, and it is important that we are aware of this. So how can imagining successful performances actually increase our confidence is a question you might be asking yourself right now. So when using imagery, you can take into account a number of variables, including things such as the sound of the crowd, or what you see, what you would feel when you're picking up the equipment, or when you're wearing your, your race attire, and even what you smell, right? So be aware of all your senses when you're trying to imagine. Finally, think about how you want to imagine yourself. So are you seeing yourself from a third person point of view, or are you seeing yourself from a first person point of view? These are some of the questions you can ask yourself when you're trying to create an imagery script for yourself, which will ultimately help you feel more confident before an event or a competition. You can even practice it in your training sessions. So that was all about imaginal experiences. Moving on to physiological states. So do you kind of view physiological arousal as facilitative or debilitative? So that is a question you can ask yourself. Does it help you or does it make you feel worse? So when we are nervous, we start to experience an increase in heart rate, increase in sweating, you get clammy hands, you get a dry mouth, you get thoughts constantly running through your mind. So these are some of the things we've all experienced when we feel nervous. So the importance with this aspect is how we view those arousal states. So it is natural for every athlete to become nervous before a competition or a match. So the important part is, how do you deal with your physiological arousal? So if you view an increased heart rate as a cause of your natural anxiety, how is that going to influence your confidence, right? So if you an increased heart rate as worry and fear, how is that going to impact on performance and confidence? Right. So there are two ways of looking at it, as I've put it up on the screen. One is a natural cause of anxiety, and the second one could be worry and fear. So anxiety and nerves are a way of our mind to kind of, mind and body actually, to prepare us for competition. So try and view physiological arousal as facilitative to your performance. So even if you're getting nervous, you see yourself sweating, you see yourself like getting clammy and really like agitated, try and see it as a sign that you are getting high arousal for the competition, which basically tells you that you're getting ready for the competition, which is why you're nervous, instead of getting worryful and fearful that, oh my God, I'm nervous, right? So the physiological state basically depends on how you view the situation, right? So that it depends on how you basically perceive the situation to be. So try and perceive it as facilitative and see how it helps you to be ready for the competition or the race. Right. So that was all about physiological state. Now we'll talk a little about emotional state. So by experiencing positive emotional states, such as happiness, joy, excitement, you are more likely to increase confidence. So as a coach, think of how you can actually help athletes to experience more positive emotional states, right? This could be done by asking questions such as, do I kind of set my sessions to be fun and enjoyable in terms of training sessions? Do I set challenging goals which athletes want to overcome? Do I offer support to my athletes when I have set challenging goals for them? Do I create a positive environment for my athletes, right? So one very important aspect is obviously individual differences. So the best coaches will understand that every athlete is very different. They will realize that not every technique is or every intervention will work for every athlete. So as a coach, it is important that you're aware of this and you kind of understand each individual really differently, because each person's mindset works very differently, especially when it comes to emotional states and physiological states and how they perceive competitions. Right, so we have another activity for you guys now. So what you basically need to do is divide a page, if you have in front of you, into two columns. So you can label the first column as high confidence situations, as you can see on the screen, and the second one as low confidence situations. To achieve a greater sense of stability in your confidence, it is necessary to know what exactly causes it to fluctuate in the first place, right? So we can again, spend some time thinking about what are some of the situations that make me feel high on confidence and what are some of the situations that make me feel low on confidence. So in the first column, you can list all of the situations or all of the circumstances in which you feel completely confident, such as when I win, obviously I feel really confident. Or when my coach praises me, I feel really confident. Similarly, you will write in low confidence situations what makes you feel really low on confidence. So when you know you haven't prepared enough or when you haven't got enough prep time, that makes you feel low confidence. when you know I have to kind of compete against a competitor I have lost before, that makes me feel low confident. So these are some of the things you are already aware of, and you become more conscious of them the next time you're going to face them. So again, let's take about 30 seconds to a minute to just think of a few situations. You can use the ones I've mentioned on the screen as a starting point for you guys, and then try and think deeper. What can be some of the sources that you can think of when it comes to high confidence situations and low confidence situations? Try and think of specific competitions or specific events that you might have had where you felt really confident or when you didn't feel confident, and then think of what you can write under each of the two headings. Okay, so I hope I've given you a starting point to this activity. Maybe you can complete it after this webinar. You can give it a good thought and come back to it. So clearly identifying the situations that make you feel uneasy is the first step towards building greater self-confidence. So we will come back to these lists in some of the remaining exercises, but for now, it should have just kind of served as an awareness of areas that can be improved when you think of confidence. Right, so moving on to the next section of today's presentation is all about body language, postures, and expressions. So here's the first one for you. We'll talk about expressions. If you can just spend some time seeing what expression you think she's showing, and you can just vote on the screen. What do you think? Yeah, so I think every 36%, almost right. So most of you, okay, it's still wavering. Let's wait a couple of seconds. Okay, so 41% of you guys think she looks happy. Is that true? Does she really look happy? So I think she looks really angry. That's what she looks in this expression. So I don't know why you guys thought she looked happy, but definitely not happy was what she was supposed to. She looks really angry. So yeah, so so for facial expressions alone actually have the ability to convey that our feelings, they can convey our feelings without any additional information. So a lot of times we communicate messages through our body language. So in fact, 55% of the messages comes from the body language, like facial expressions, posture, hand gestures, and even sometimes the clothes we wear, right? It kind of depicts the mood we are in. It kind of depicts the kind of state we're trying to represent to the others. So yeah, this one, she was definitely angry. For the ones who said she was happy, I don't think so. Maybe you can try the next one and see if you get that one correct. So what do you think she's experiencing in this photograph? Try and gauge her expressions, her posture, her attitude in the photograph, and then see if that helps you understand. Awesome, you guys. Good job. 88% of you guys said that she looks upset, which is very, very correct. So you can see that she's clearly thinking about something. She's really upset. Something is playing on her mind, which has not made her very happy. So yeah, upset is definitely the right answer. So yeah, you got better with the second one. The first one was a bit confusing, I guess. Moving on to the next one. This is probably the easiest one, you guys. What do you think she's feeling in this picture? This one's super easy, you guys. Come on. Yes, 93%. Awesome, you guys. So she's clearly happy. She has a big smile on her face. Her shoulders are really rolled back, which shows that she has no sort of stress or pressure on her head. So yeah, this one is definitely happy. And I'm glad to see that you guys have identified that clearly. Okay, last one for you guys. What do you think she looks here? This one can be a little tricky, but let's see if you get it. Try and gauge her facial expressions, her posture, all of that. A tricky one for you guys. Okay, I think it's really close between confused and annoyed. I get it. I think it's either of the two. I would say she's a bit annoyed because she's a little upset as well. So, yeah, I think you guys have done a pretty good job with this. It could be confused or annoyed because you can gauge that, but it's definitely annoyed is what it was supposed to be. So, good job with whoever voted for annoyed, and the ones who voted for confused, also very close to that. Right. So if we talk about body language, it is literally the unspoken element of communication that we use to reveal our feelings, our emotions, all of that, right? So sports is all about the body movement and non-verbal communication because you don't talk as much as you show what you are feeling. So, world class and professional athletes carry themselves in a certain way. They move and walk with confidence. So, that's something that you can pay attention to the next time. So, a first step in developing confidence is to learn to walk the walk, right? So, that's basically how you carry yourself, how you move, and how you walk. So, that kind of affects what you think and how you feel, right? So if you walk with like a slouched back and shoulders, then you yourself don't feel as confident. So it's more about what you feel because of your walk. So if your body is down, your thoughts and feelings will also be negative. If your body is up, then your thoughts and feelings will be positive. So walking the walk involves moving with your head really high, chin up, eyes forward, shoulders back, arms swinging, and a bounce in your step. So you look and move like a winner, right? So this is all about walk the walk. If you want to just learn that, so I'll just repeat what it involves. Your head has to be high, your chin has to be up, your eyes look forward, your shoulders are back, your arms are swinging, and there's a little bit of a bounce in your step that kind of shows that you are really confident and enthusiastic. So you look and move like a winner, right? So that is all about walk the walk. So there was a really interesting research done by the University of British Columbia. They actually studied blind athletes and non-blind athletes around the world. So they found that athletes made the same body language expression when they run a race, even blind athletes who had never actually seen anyone do it before. So the body language of a winner is basically classic. Arms and hands are above the head, mouth open, face pointed up towards the sky, exclaiming the kind of triumph they've won, right? So body language is something that you should, it's ingrained in us before we even see someone else do it. Like blind athletes were also doing the same body language when they won a race, even though they hadn't really seen someone else do it. So that just suggests that body language is something that comes very naturally to us, but we can kind of improvise on it to feel more confident. So that is what we're focusing on today. So another research, very interesting one. So for both men and women, testosterone is one of the most important hormones in the body with regards to building muscle mass, increasing energy and stamina, promoting fat loss, and promoting and actually putting us in a confident mood. So on the other hand, high levels of cortisol levels, which are very related to stress levels, can cause anxiety and promote the breakdown of muscle and bone connective tissue, which is obviously not good. So obviously, as an athlete, you would want high testosterone, obviously not very high, a moderately high level of testosterone and low levels of cortisol levels. So, and this is where this research on body language comes into play. So this psychologist was a Harvard professor, and she conducted a research on how we respond to our nonverbal actions and how they affect our thoughts, feelings, and even our physiology. So the question she asks is, can our bodies change our minds? So can we change our bodies because of our minds? So what she did was she conducted a test involving two groups of people. One group was asked to hold a power pose that we will be talking about later for 2 minutes, while the other group kind of held a low power pose for the same amount of time. So after adopting the respective poses for 2 minutes and cross-checking that their baseline levels, she actually discovered that the people who stood in the high power pose experienced a 20% increase in their testosterone and a 25% decrease in their cortisol levels. So the people who stood in a low power pose experienced a 10% decrease in their testosterone and a 10% increase in their cortisol levels. So basically, standing in the power pose actually helped them to lower their cortisol levels and increase their testosterone levels by just simply standing in the power pose. So can you even imagine the effect body language has on our minds and vice versa, right? Something to really think about when we talk about body language. Right, so now moving on to an interesting one here. So I'm going to play two videos for you. You have to basically understand the difference in her body language. You can pay attention to her walk, her body language, her gestures, her facial expressions, all of the stuff we just spoke about today, right? So I'm going to play the first one for you. Okay, and now I'm going to play the second one for you. Okay, did you see the difference there? So for example, a sprinter who walks out to his lane and his head held low and tension showing on his eyebrows immediately gives himself away to the opponents already. So this player is anxious and uncomfortable, which can be read to everyone, including his competitors. So in comparison, a player who kind of walks with his head held really high and chest pushed out kind of displays confidence and control. Right. So one key skill for players is to act confidently, even if they might not feel that way inside. So this influences the perception opponents have about them and hopefully offers even a slight advantage. So the really interesting thing is that over time, by acting confident, an athlete might actually begin to think that he is actually confident, right? So it's almost as if you're fooling yourself that you are confident by displaying a confident body language. So confident body language or confident athletes display good body language when they are under pressure even, right? So it could just like a good advice to any athlete entering a pressure situation is to smile. No one ever expects people to smile under pressure, yet alone look like they are actually enjoying it, right? And secondly, smiling actually releases feel good hormones in our bloodstream, making us feel very calm and upbeat. So that's a good place to be when you're in a pressure situation, right? So smile when you're under pressure. That's a trick that you want to use the next time. Right. So what differences did we notice here, right? Let's just play it one more time and then we'll discuss what differences we noticed here. And the second one. Right. So in the first one, you see her head in the first video on the left hand side, you see that her head is really high, her shoulders are broad, and she has a confident smile. Whereas in the second one, the video on your right hand side, you see her looking at the ground, shoulders are slouched, and an upset and nervous facial expression, right? So there's a difference you already can make out when you just look at these two videos. Appearance. Now, everyone makes assumptions about how athletes look based on how they actually look, or how they feel based on how they look, right? So a tall, strong athlete looking like, really confident about herself or himself is very evidently observed. You kind of always catch your eyes towards a confident athlete, right? So you can intimidate your competitors just the way you want to, right? So you want to intimidate them by scaring them with your appearance, right? So in your head, you might actually be nervous, but that doesn't mean you show it to them. So by showing it to them, you're already leaving them at an advantage before the race has begun. So try and use your appearance, your walk, your body language to your advantage so that the competitors are actually intimidated by you before the race has already begun, leaving you at an advantage during the race. Moving on to posture. So an athlete, like I mentioned, with his head down and shoulders slouched is a terrible sign during competition. So be aware of your posture and stand tall. Even before, like just before the race, your shoulders should be rolled back. Hold your head up and shoulders, even in the midst of like the worst situation ever, right? So here's an activity for improving posture. Remember that a picture tells 1,000 words. So simple thing you could do is squeeze your shoulder blades together when you are at the start position. As you exhale, relax your shoulders and draw them back down. Here's what I mean. Yeah, so that's what I mean by, squeeze your shoulder blades together and then exhale, relax your shoulders and then draw them back down, right? So this is how you could improve your posture before a race or, just before a starting position of an event. Okay, so what does it mean to be poised? Poised literally means to be graceful, elegant. So how can you practice being poised? I know I'm saying this word as if it's really easy, but sometimes it's not that difficult to display that you're feeling poised. So one way is to kind of keep books on your head, which is the old school technique, and just kind of walk so that you kind of maintain a really good body posture and an elegant posture. So here's how you could do it. Right. So this will help you be more confident in terms of rolling your shoulders behind, head up, and being more poised that I mean here. Moving on to expressions. So expressions are basically the look on someone's face that convey a particular emotion. So now that we all use social media so much, and WhatsApp emojis literally give us a very good idea of what I mean by emojis. There are tons of ways to express what we're feeling, and expressions are the best way to do that. It's very hard to hide your facial expressions. So your facial expression depict your confidence level, your aggression, or your level of exhaustion. So when you're tired, your face will immediately show it. When you're aggressive, your face will show it. So you may want to hide your real emotions to portray that you are confident and energetic. So even if you're feeling like really upset or stressed or angry or nervous, you don't want to evidently show it on your facial expression, because that will immediately be shown off to your competitors or anyone else who's actually watching you. So you want to show that you're confident and not that you're nervous. So that's another trick that you could use the next time before an event. So like I was mentioning earlier, there was a really interesting research on smile that I found. There was a Russian Olympic weightlifting team coach that noticed athletes actually grimaced when they performed at their max effort lifts or lifted to exhaustion. So basically, he believed that his athletes' reactions were negatively impacting their performance, right? So he conducted an experiment to see if he could get more out of his lifters. So he encouraged his athletes to smile when they got to the point of exhaustion, right? So even when he actually added like 2 or 3 reps to their performance, he encouraged them to smile. So why does smiling seem to translate to increased performance? So when we show negative body language during a lift or during a race, we tell our brains that we're not capable of doing something that, when we're too tired or when we're too sore to carry on, even if that's not the case. So the brain reacts to our body language messages by releasing stress hormones like cortisol, like the one I mentioned earlier, into our bloodstream that makes the task even more challenging. So this creates a vicious cycle, right? So the more stressed you are, the difficult the task it becomes, which in turn increases your stress level. So it's a cycle you want to break. However, when we smile and act enthusiastic, we send our brain a more positive message saying, I got this, or I'm going to make this lift, or I'm going to make this race in the timing I've targeted for. So as a result, your performance improves, and you may very well hit those extra reps that you're trying to. It's all about projecting the confidence you actually see. So this experiment on smile is really interesting. So next time you feel exhausted or sore or you feel you can't do it, just literally give yourself a smile to help yourself push harder and actually do better in the race, even though you might be really tired. Moving on to the body language of defeat and shame. So sadly, losers also have a unique body expression, right? So we don't kind of learn this expression by observation. We are innately programmed to do this when we lose. Losers actually roll their shoulders, they hang their head low, they make a kind of pained or sad expression and clench their hands into a fist of defeat. It looks similar to kind of a balloon deflating in the air, right? So the adrenaline and excitement leaves the body in sadness and frustration, right? So this is what a body language of defeat and shame looks like. So even the body language of defeat and shame can be actually very easily identified, because we see certain people walking and we feel like, oh, I know he must have lost. That's why he's walking that way, right? So the point I'm trying to make here is that body language and your posture and the way you carry yourself out makes a huge impact on your confidence and your performance, which are very closely related. So the power pose that I was talking about is something that you should practice every time you're trying to feel more confident or trying to just gain some self-esteem before a race or an event. So try these power poses the next time you need a boost of confidence. So hold each pose for 2 minutes to kind of benefit the power of power posing. So you stand in front of a mirror or whatever it is that feels really intimidating, and you put your hands on your hips almost like Superman and hold your head up with a broad puffed up chest. So you act like you are the boss, and you know that this bar, for example, in this photograph will be like very afraid of me, right? So you stand in a victory stance with your arms above your head in a celebratory V shape, right? So you could clench your fists or even keep your palms open and practice this pose for 2 minutes, right? It's scientifically proven to be really, really helpful to boost confidence. So here's how you could do it. So she stood in the power pose for like around 2 minutes, like I said. And then she tried to lift the barbell that she was probably scared of earlier. And she said, I can do this, which goes back to the verbal persuasions that we spoke about earlier. Similarly, if you just want to simply stand in front of the mirror and, practice the power pose looking at yourself, that's also very helpful. And she's doing a sort of self-talk. She's looking at herself in the mirror and she's saying, I can do this. It's not to prove anyone else, but almost to convince herself that she is capable of doing it, which is what the meaning of confidence is all about, the belief that you have in your own abilities, right? So try this power pose the next time. I'm sure it'll have a huge difference in your confidence level. Yes, so good to almost reaching towards the end of the presentation. We have head coach James Hillier talking about confidence. Let's see what he has to say.
Okay, so it's really important when you're thinking about confidence and self-confidence that you're thinking the right way, because thoughts become things. So when you're warming up, I want you to think about having a big presence at the track. I want you to walk with shoulders high, shoulders back. I want you to walk with confidence. I want you to feel confidence. I want you to feel like you're big and strong and all your competitors are small and weak. It's really important that even if you've got any bit of doubt in your mind, you just pass it off. You just put it away, park it. You've got to think you're the best. And that starts with how you walk, how you feel, what your posture's like, and have a presence in the warm-up. So make sure that everyone sees you walking around with high energy, with high expertise, high motivation, lots and lots of confidence, because everybody before the competition is going to be nervous. Everybody is going to be worrying about everyone else. So if they're looking at you and you are big and strong and confident, then that can only impact them in a negative way. You can't win the race before it happens, but you can lose it. So your goal is to basically help other people lose the race before it by having this aura about you, confidence, of walking tall, being arrogant, brash, obnoxious, all this sort of stuff. And this will really, really help you. And if you think that way, it will elicit that way in performance, even if you're not like that in a normal situation. So remember, thoughts become things. So think you're the best. Think confidence. Think you're fast. Think you're strong. Think you're the best. And it's more likely to happen in a race. Good luck.
Right. So what did we learn from what he had to say? Pre-competition, body language is really crucial. So try and pay some attention to it. Maintain a good body posture. Don't neglect how you are presenting yourself. Don't let your doubts linger around your head before the race. And remember that pre-race nervousness is extremely normal. So accept it and learn a way that actually helps yourself instead of just fighting off the nervousness, right? So accept it and deal with it in a more strategic manner instead of just feeling horrible about it. Right, so here's a quick summary of what we've covered so far. So we spoke about what confidence is, and to remember that it is actually your belief in your own ability. We then discussed the 6 sources of confidence that you can practice now in your training sessions. Non-verbal communication is as important as anything else. So focus on body language, especially along with good posture. So yeah, with that, I think I would like to conclude this webinar. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening to me patiently. I hope I have covered what you were looking for in this topic. And yeah, you may now ask me any questions that you may have regarding this topic, and I'll try and answer as many of them as I can. Thank you.
Thank you, Maithili. Thank you for that wonderful session. Now we are moving on to the Q&A session. On behalf of all the coaches who are attending this webinar, I have a question for you. Can coaches build a routine to boost confidence?
Yeah, you can actually develop a routine in terms of building confidence. So the 6 sources that we spoke about, you can actually tailor a plan for an individual athlete and understand which one works for him and which one doesn't, and build a routine that is practiced in his training session. So for example, if I know a certain athlete feels really nervous before a 200-meter event, just before his practice 200-meter events, every time I will make him do, like, say, the power pose for 2 minutes. I will make him, he will practice a set of statements, positive self-talk statements that will help him feel more confident. And then he kind of just spends a couple of seconds visualizing his most confident self. So what I'm trying to imply here is that you've created a routine for the athlete that he practices every time in his training session, that he just has to replicate in his competition session, in his competition, which he has learned from the training sessions. So basically, developing a routine to build confidence is the best way to actually do it, because just the way you're practicing physically training, you can actually practice a routine to build confidence as well. So you kind of replicate that confidence that you're gaining in training in competitions as well.
Great. Thank you for answering that, Maithili. Our next question is from Ashwini Dakole. She's asking, what is verbal persuasion in self-efficacy?
Right. So verbal persuasion is more about the self-talk I mentioned. It could include other verbal persuasions as well, but try and focus more on the athlete's own self-talk that he is going to do with himself that will make him feel more confident. So one of the simplest ways is to practice positive self-talk before an event, before training sessions, before going to bed, or any time that he actually feels comfortable. A second way of doing it is the coach's verbal instructions or the verbal praises that he is gaining. So they don't always have to be praises, but they could be constructive feedback. They could be constructive information that the athlete could gain in terms of verbally feeling more confident. So the coaches could be a great source of passing on verbal persuasion in terms of how he feels more confident. So certain athletes just feel more confident by listening to their coaches tell them how to perform in terms of technique. So this is what you need to do in today's race. This is how your competitor is going to be, and you need to be ready with so and so. So it's just a sort of instruction that you are passing on verbally, which makes the athlete feel much more confident before a race. So it doesn't always have to be praises, but it's more about verbally what you pass on in terms of information, in terms of technique, in terms of advice. It could be anything. So the coaches and the athletes can both actually help increasing confident levels verbally.
Okay, thank you for the answer, Maithili. Next question is from Dr. Rajivan Krishnan Nair. He's asking, could you please explain again what is this high power pose and low power poses?
Right. So high power pose is the Superman pose that I went back. Actually, I'll just go back to the slide and show you guys what I mean by that. So this one is basically the high power pose. It's when you feel more confident, it's called a power pose because you're practicing feeling more powerful, even though you might not be feeling. So this is a high power pose. And the opposite of that is a low power pose, which is basically you feeling really, you look down, your shoulders are slouched, you can't make eye contact, and you're walking like really, not confidently. So it's the opposite of this. In this, you're feeling like a Superman. So it's also called a Superman pose sometimes because you're practicing feeling really powerful with your chest really open apart. So those are the two, high power pose and low power pose. So if you see an athlete walking in a low power pose or a posture, that's when you kind of already pick up that he is not feeling as confident, or he is having some sort of negative thoughts in his mind, and you could help him change those.
All right, thank you. Our next question is from Disotosu Peter. He's asking how to handle kids who are not very sociable. How as a coach we can deal with them.
Right. So it can be difficult for certain children to kind of become very involved with others if they're not very social. So I think the simplest way is to engage them in really fun activities with their fellow mates. So I think they are most comfortable with people like themselves, like other athletes, basically. So they will be more comfortable and most in their safe comfort zone with other athletes or with athletes of their age. So you want to try and kind of create a safe environment in the training session or in the, whatever classes that you're carrying on with them, so that they feel comfortable, number one, in the training session, and then they can kind of go on to the the second group of people that you want them to be more social with. So yeah, try and make the activities really fun and engaging, and kind of help them to become more fun loving people with people of their own age group, so that they enjoy the activities instead of just doing it for the sake of doing it.
Thanks, Maithili. Next question, a very interesting question from Rajiv Kumar Srivastava. He's asking, there are so many individuals who are so cool and composed, and rarely they express their emotions. So expressions or reflections of body language may not be the same in all individuals. Is that so? Or do you have what is your take on it?
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting one, because obviously every individual has a really different way of, displaying his expressions or displaying how he is before an event or before a competition. So someone who is really calm could be, displaying it much differently from someone who else is also who is calm. So yeah, I think body language all in all will differ and will have a lot of individual differences, but it's basically coming down to what is going on in your mind and what you are trying to basically portray to yourself and to others. So if you are calm, and if you feel like you are aggressive, or if you are whatever is it that you're feeling, if you know what you're feeling and that's the state that you want to be in, then it shouldn't matter in terms of how the other person is looking when he's aggressive. So if I'm aggressive and he's aggressive, and I am showing something else and he's showing something else, it's fine. I have to basically be at my best arousal level ultimately to help me perform best. So if I know I can't perform well at a low arousal level, I need to figure out a way to be at a high arousal level. So yeah, there will be individual differences, but it's basically up to how you perceive yourself and how you can actually help yourself optimize performance.
All right, thanks, Maithili. Next one is a very practical question from Nutan. I think most of the coaches will be facing such situations at the grassroots to development level. He's asking, after some success, if an athlete is planning to leave sports thinking he can't succeed at the highest level, in that scenario, in a situation, how a coach can build confidence in them?
Sorry, can you just repeat the last bit for me?
How a coach can build confidence in such athletes who are planning to leave athletics or any sports thinking they're not going to win at the highest level.
Yeah, I think that is a very difficult situation to be in, to be honest. But if you kind of find the correct source of motivation for the athlete, I think that is going to be the only way you can help them continue their sport. So sometimes if they sometimes love the sport and they have a lot of passion for it, but they might realize that they're not actually making it in terms of a career, for example. That's when they need to find a really good source of motivation which will help them to continue the sport. So role models, for example, who might have gone through similar challenges, who have not achieved a lot of success in their early stages, or who can't make it earlier, and then eventually they kind of have one or two really good breakthroughs, and they kind of just make it out there. So role models is one really good way of motivating them. When we talk about motivation, secondly, I think this most important one is the intrinsic or the internal motivation that we talk about. So remind them of why they started in the first place. Most athletes are obviously very passionate about their sports. If you remind them of why they started in the first place and why they love the sport, it's very difficult for them to actually leave a sport that they love. If they don't have that sort of internal motivation, then you want to find some sort of extrinsic motivation or external motivation in terms of what they could benefit from keeping, continuing the sport in their future lives. So it all comes down to motivation, depends on where they're at in terms of levels, and then finding the right source of motivation for them.
Thanks, Maithili. Here's a question from one of our YouTube viewer, Syog Joshi. He's asking, ma'am, how can I stay motivated during the workout? I think he meant most of the time the workouts are monotonous. They'll be doing almost similar type of activities. How we can keep our athletes motivated during the workouts?
Right. So I think you need to number one, set really challenging goals for yourself, even if the workout might not be as exciting or might not be as new every time. So one way of doing that is kind of setting a challenge for yourself every workout you do. It could be a really small challenge that you take up for yourself, but you need to kind of have a goal or an objective in your mind in terms of what the goal is for today. Once you have that, you are going to look forward to actually fulfilling that, or to actually achieving that in the session. So it could be like anything that you set for yourself. Even if the session is boring, you set a goal or an objective that you have to fulfill. If that also doesn't work, then you need to find a way to make the workouts more fun and interesting for yourself. So simple ways is to kind of have some sort of a playlist that you play during the workout that will help you feel really pumped up and feel energetic. So like a certain playlist of songs that you play every time and you feel really good about when you're working out. If that also doesn't work out, then you can definitely try and find like a good training partner or something in terms of a group that will motivate you to keep going, so you can challenge others, you can kind of make it more fun and interesting. So when we talk about motivation, it's all about why you're really there and what you really want to achieve. So when you think of the end goal, that this is what I'm trying to achieve, the workouts won't be as boring as they were earlier, because you have a purpose in mind. So remind yourself of the purpose that you're actually trying to achieve, and you will not feel as bored as you were earlier.
Thanks, Maithili. There are so many questions in the Q&A, both due to lack of time, we won't be able to answer all of them, but we will try to answer those in the next Q&A sessions. We have time for only 2 more questions. There is another very interesting question from Anil D'Souza. He's asking, sometimes when we try to build up confidence, do you think it can also make some athletes overconfident?
Yeah, I think that is a very good question. And I think that is relevant because sometimes we practice confidence so much, or we might take it so seriously that, I have to be confident, that it might lead to overconfidence. So I think it's up to the athlete and up to the coach to kind of realize when is that optimum level of confidence that he or she has reached, and what does it mean to be overconfident. So overconfident could be a really subjective parameter and could mean really different things for different people. Sometimes being overconfident helps certain athletes. Sometimes being overconfident obviously doesn't help certain athletes. So I think it's more about individually understanding that whether or not being overconfident will help me or will not help me, and then accordingly tailor the routine that we spoke about earlier.
All right, thanks, Maithili, for that. Our last question, it's again a very good question from Om Prakash Chibber. He's asking how to boost confidence just before an event or competition.
Right. So I think just before an event, you've already done the major work that needed to be done in your training sessions. You've, physically done all the training and stuff. Mentally also, you would have prepared in terms of building a routine and things like that. So before a competition, I think it comes down to just simply managing an effective routine that you follow. So number one, you should always, I tell all my athletes that you should have a routine that you follow just before a competition. So I take this much time to warm up. I take this much time to practice my visualization, this much time to eat my pre-competition meal or whatever it is. Basically have a really fixed routine that you do. And once you've done this routine, you basically know that you've ticked all the boxes that help you feel more confident, right? So once you've done that, you're already going to feel confident because you know that I have done all the things I needed to do to race really well. So it all comes down to practicing a good, effective routine which you set in your training session. So before the event is all about just executing what you have practiced in your training sessions.
Thank you so much, Maithili. That was our last question. Thank you so much once again for hosting us. Such a wonderful and informative session. I'm sure all of us have gained valuable knowledge from it. Now, I would like to hand it back to you, Maithili, if you have some parting words for our attendees.
Yes, I would once again like to thank all of you for listening to me so patiently and for asking such wonderful questions. It got me thinking as well in terms of so much because they were so intriguing. So yeah, thank you so much for being so active and for asking such amazing questions. And I really enjoyed being here. So thank you once again for having me here. And thank you, Ajit, for helping me moderate this so well.
Thank you, Maithili, once again. And a big thank you to all the participants for attending today's session. We hope you enjoyed it, and we look forward to seeing you back with us next Friday, that is 6th August at 4 p.m. at our next webinar on teaching hurdles to a beginner in just 30 minutes, presented by James Hillier, head coach at Reliance Foundation Odisha Athletics High Performance Training Center. I'm curious to attend that session because when I was a hurdler, I took 1 week to learn that. It will be a very interesting session for all of you. Before you leave the session, we request to kindly fill out the feedback form that you will be able to see after the end of the session. On behalf of the entire RFYS family, thank you once again. We hope you all have a great weekend ahead.